Tessa wakes up to the smell of smoke. She peeks her head out of the wagon to see that Johnny has built a campfire and is cooking breakfast in an iron skillet. She smiles. That was always the one thing she loved about Johnny. That cowboy could cook. He throws some bacon in the skillet and it sizzles. She steps down out of the wagon and walks up to him. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I treat you to a gourmet breakfast out here in these woods?" She nods her head. "Well, of course you can, cowboy." He gives her a plate with scrambled eggs and bacon on it. "Here, this one's already cooked. You can have this plate." She takes a deep breath as she thinks about the day ahead of them. "You know, he's not just going to give us our babies, Johnny. He's going to put up a huge fight, and we're in his territory. Even if we beat him, it's going to be hard getting out of Georgia." "Well, after all that I've heard about him, he's got a judgment day coming. And now that he's taken our children, hell's on the other end of that judgment. He won't live another day. And I'm okay with not making it out of Georgia alive, as long as I know he doesn't get to walk another day on this earth, and you and our children do." "Johnny, the children need their father, though, and I need you. I don't want to go through life alone." Johnny looks over. "And they're going to have a father in their life, and you're going to have a man. I don't just want a man. I want my man," she says as she reaches out, grabbing his arm. She realizes she's grabbing his wounded arm. "Oh, I'm sorry." He smiles and takes a bite of bacon. "I promise. And besides, Tess, look at all the hell we've been through. Look at all the people who have wanted us dead, who've captured us and shot at us. God delivers us from it all, and he promises to deliver us from all trouble in his word." She smiles. "You have a Bible now?" she asks. "I do. Made a friend the other day who gave me one." "Johnny, I'm so glad to hear your relationship with Christ is growing." He smiles. "Every day. The more dangerous this life gets, the more I realize how much I need him. He's the only thing I need more than you. And that's really saying something. You know, I prayed day and night that he would lead me back to you, and that he would protect you, and he did." Tessa looks at Johnny and says, "Amen. He's always been there. Even before you knew him, he was there." You know, I was reading that last book in the Bible called Revelation, and Tessa, I did not know Jesus was a cowboy. Confused, Tessa asks, "What do you mean a cowboy?" Johnny laughs and says, "Well, I figured when he came back to this earth for us, that maybe he'd be in some heavenly chariot carried by angels bringing him or something like that. But no, instead I read that he's going to be on a white horse." She looks at him and smiles. "That's true." Johnny makes his plate and sits next to her. "Let's eat." He looks to his left at her and just starts smiling and staring at her. She smiles back and says, "What?" "You know, I've seen some amazing things that God has made with his hands. From winding rivers to fields of wheat growing in the open prairies across the plains of Texas, to the stars he's cast across the velvet purple of the night sky. And coming all the way out here, I've even seen tall, tall trees and mountains that seem to reach the heavens. But after all these things I've seen, I still haven't seen anything that comes close to the beauty he gave you." Tears begin to fill Tessa's eyes. "Woman, I love you with all of my heart." She puts her plate down and embraces Johnny beside her. "I don't know of anyone else that shares the kind of love that we do, and I'm okay with that," says Johnny. Tessa agrees. After having breakfast, Johnny tells Tessa the plan to rescue the children, and they get back into the wagon and head to Smith Plantation. Tessa hides in the back where no one can see her because she knows she is wanted for killing Smith's brother. As they carry on, Tessa instructs Johnny on where to go for the next hour and a half. Finally, she says, "There it is, through them gates." They see two men standing outside the gates with guns guarding, so no one comes in or out without permission. As they begin to get closer to the gate, the men notice Johnny. "How far is the plantation from these gates?" Johnny asks. "About a 15-minute walk from here, back in the woods," she whispers. "Grab the pistol off of my left hip. Things are about to get ugly. Be ready." She sneaks the gun off of his left hip, leaving him with the one on his right, and gets back down into the back where she can't be seen. The two men holding rifles in their hands get suspicious and begin making their way over to the wagon. "Whoa, cowboy, hold your horses," one states as they stop Johnny. "What business do you have coming onto this land?" "Well, I come to buy some slaves." The men look at each other. "We ain't got no slaves. That's illegal now." "Come on, gentlemen. Don't play dumb with me. I was told by an old-timer back in town that this was going on here. Told me I needed to talk to a businessman named Mr. Smith." "Well, I guess you heard right then. This is his land." They look at the wagon and one asks, "What's in the back?" "Oh, nothing, just some grains and hay for my horses. I've traveled a long way to meet with Mr. Smith today. He's expecting me." "Ha! That's funny, 'cause he didn't tell us nothing about meeting a cowboy today. And say, you said you've been traveling a long way through these woods. You didn't happen to see a colored woman wandering around out there, did you? We got a slave wanted for murder of Mr. Smith's brother. Killed him and set his whole plantation on fire. There's a $5,000 reward for anyone who finds her. But if anyone finds her and tries to help her, they'll be hanged too." Johnny shakes his head. "I ain't seen nothing, boys. And I'm sure you won't mind us looking in the back of this here wagon just to make sure of it." "Go right ahead if that's what you want." Tessa pulls the hammer back on the pistol and covers herself with a blanket laying down. "Wilmer, take a look in the back there, and I'll keep an eye on him." The other man goes to the back, and Johnny keeps his hand ready to draw. Wilmer opens the back flaps with his gun, seeing nothing but bags of grain and hay. "Nothing back here, Robbie." The man in front of Johnny lowers his gun and says, "I guess you're good to go then." Just as Wilmer is about to close the flaps, he sees the blanket and whispers to himself, "Wait a minute." He puts his gun down in the wagon and begins to pull the blanket. Just as he does, Tessa pops up and says, "Remember me?" She shoots him twice, and Johnny draws his pistol and shoots the man at the front at the same time. Johnny turns around at Tessa and says, "You okay, honey?" She nods her head yes. "Thank God. I didn't know if you shot him or he shot you." "Yeah, that was close." "Okay, darling. Well, you just lay back down in case we run into any more trouble. And remember, just follow our plan." "Okay," she says. "And hey, I love you, Tessa." He kisses her. "And if I leave this old world today, I just want you to know that you're the only girl for me. And I wouldn't have missed loving you for the world." "I love you too, Johnny. And no matter what happens, your ass is coming back with me to Texas." Johnny grins. "Yes, ma'am." They begin making their way down the wooded path, the wagon slushing through the wet red dirt from the rain the night before. They pray that no one at the plantation heard the gunshot so that they can at least stand a chance of fighting and not being met with an ambush. The plantation house begins to come into view. "Hey, Tess, how many more people does he got living here?" "Well, there were 6 other slaves when I left. The 2 men who guarded the gate. There's his wife. His son stops by once a day, and he's got 2 men that watch the slaves in the field all day." "About how old is his son?" "Oh, he's in his 30s, around our age. Mr. Smith is 53 himself." "Okay, we're coming up close now. Stay down." As they approach the plantation, Johnny sees the big field full of cotton behind the house. He notices the 2 men with guns in the fields as well. Guess no one heard the gunshots. Thank God for that. He stops the wagon out front, and the door of the plantation swings open. Mr. Smith walks out on the porch. Johnny is now looking at the man who has raped and beaten and enslaved the love of his life and kidnapped his 2 children. Every part of his being wants to explode and just finish the job right away, but he knows he must refrain in order for his plan to work. Mr. Smith looks at Johnny and says, "Can I help you?" Johnny smiles and says, "I think you can. Heard back in town that you've got some slaves on this property, and I'd like to buy me some of my own, take them back to Texas with me. I've come a long, long way." Mr. Smith gives him a suspicious look. "Take them back to Texas, you say? That's funny that you'd say you've come a long way, all the way from Texas even. But yet you say you heard from a fella in town that I had slaves. So that means you didn't come all this way from Texas to buy slaves. So why are you really in Georgia in the first place?" "Well, I got family out here. My uncle passed away recently, so my aunt wrote to me that she couldn't take care of his horses anymore. So I told her I'd take them off her hands. While in town, I got to talking with an old-timer, and he told me about you." "Uh-huh. I see. Figured I could use some help on my ranch. I'm just wondering how you got through my gates, 'cause my boys don't let nobody through unless I say so. I told them I was coming with a lot of money, and they figured you'd be happy to talk to me, so they let me through." Mr. Gates sips from a glass of sweet tea. The screen door swings open, and his wife walks out on the porch holding 2 biracial babies. Johnny knows that's their children. "Babies," Johnny states. "Yeah, those are going to grow up to be some of my best slaves. They belong to this worthless woman who killed my brother this past week. Y'all find her?" "Not yet, but we're going to soon. She won't make it out of Georgia alive." And now that I think of it, she's from Texas too. Funny you'd show up looking to buy one and take back to Texas. You say those are going to be your best slaves, huh?" "That's right." "I tell you what, I'll take them off your hands. And those other 2 children I see right there in that there field working. All those children come from her. And when I catch her, I'm going to make sure I kill her right in front of those children so they never forget that if you rebel against me, they will pay the price she's going to," he yells as he walks down the steps. As he does, Tessa stands up out of the back of the wagon, pointing her pistol at Mr. Smith. "Here I am, you son of a bitch. I saved your boys a trip to come find me. I'd like to see you make good on that promise you just made against me." Johnny stands up and turns around. "Tessa, what are you doing? This wasn't the plan." "Oh, it's the plan, all right. I had this day planned long before I met you, Johnny. The day he dies." Mr. Smith laughs. "Tessa, I am shocked. I didn't think you were stupid enough to ever come back here." The smile runs from his face as she shoots near his feet, missing him by inches. "I'd take you out right now if I had a gun on me." Tessa takes Johnny's pistol from his side and throws it in the dirt. "Tessa!" Johnny yells. "Pick it up," she says through her teeth clenching. "I knew y'all 2 had something together. When he said he was from Texas, I knew it." "Yeah, and since I'm a Texas girl now, you're going to play by my rules. You want to kill me, right?" "Oh, you know I do." "Then we're going to fight the Texas way. You get that there gun, and I'm going to let you draw whenever you're ready. But I promise you, you falling first, not me." He laughs. "Okay, I'll play by your stupid Texas rules. I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill your cowboy next," he says, looking at Johnny. Pick it up, Tessa demands again. She jumps off the wagon and stands about 20 feet in front of Mr. Smith, putting her pistol back on her side. Mr. Smith walks to the pistol, slowly picking it up while keeping his eyes on her. He opens the barrel, ensuring there's bullets in it. Well, you're generous. You left 4 bullets in here. I only need 1. Well, 2, I guess. 1 for you and 1 for him. Now put the gun by your side, and I'm ready when you are. She takes a deep breath and says a prayer in her mind. She calls out to Johnny. I love you, Johnny. Tessa! Johnny jumps down from the wagon prepared for whatever is about to happen next. He silently prays to himself. Lord Jesus, please don't take her. Tessa stares at Mr. Smith and locks eyes with him. My brother was a good man, and you'll pay for what you did to him. Make me! Smith yanks the gun from his hip and brings it eye level as quick as he can, but he's not fast enough. Tessa beats him to it and shoots the gun right out of his hand, tearing a hole the size of a quarter straight through it and taking 3 of his fingers with it. Mr. Smith falls on the ground in agony, screaming. Tessa begins to walk towards him and says, That was for every time you slapped me. Smith rolls over on his belly and starts to crawl away from her. Another blast from her revolver finds its way into his leg. Ah! That's for every time you kicked me. He rolls onto his back, grabbing at his leg. She points the gun between his legs. And that's for every time you raped me. You colored bitch! You're gonna burn in hell! He screams up at her. She shakes her head and points the gun down at his mouth. And Lord knows this is for every time you called me out my name. Say hello to your brother in hell for me. And with that, Tessa looks up at the sky. Lord, forgive me. I took revenge into my own hands, but I didn't have a choice. Johnny runs and picks up his pistol from the dirt by the bloody corpse. He grabs Tessa to ensure she's okay. Wow, darling, I've never seen that side of you. Through the tears and relief, she says, You don't know what that man put me through. My whole life. Johnny looks to the fields and sees the other 2 men racing to the house to kill them. At the same time, Mrs. Smith runs out onto the upper balcony screaming, What have you done? As she sees the lifeless body of her husband on the ground. I'll kill your babies for this. Go get her and I'll take care of them, Johnny yells. They kiss and depart. Johnny runs towards the field, jumping behind a bale of hay as the men begin to shoot wildly from galloping horses. Tessa runs into the house. She hears her babies crying. Don't you touch my children! She screams, racing up the staircase. She runs towards the screams, opening the door to the nursery room. She sees her babies in the crib crying. She scans the room while standing in the door, but sees no one. She looks behind her, back down the staircase, but still no one. Her heart pounds, not knowing where Mrs. Smith is. She enters the room and begins to walk towards the crib. As she does, Mrs. Smith walks up behind her with a frying pan in her hand from behind the door and hits Tessa in the back of the head with it, knocking her out to the ground. Meanwhile, Johnny continues to take fire. He runs from one hay bale to the next, firing back. He manages to kill one of them. A horse runs past him. He peeks over the hay bale to see the other horse with no rider either. Where the hell did he go? He sneaks through the hay bales quietly, seeking the man. Out of nowhere, a fist comes around the bale, striking him in the cheek. The man jumps out and the 2 begin scuffing it out. This man was much bigger than Johnny. He punches Johnny again, drawing blood from above his eye. Johnny knows if he doesn't do something quick, it's over for him. And he had lost his gun and all the loose hay on the ground. The man punches Johnny in the stomach and he falls. Get your ass up, traitor, he yells, as he draws his fist way back to finish Johnny. Johnny remembers the hunting knife he has on him. He grabs it and the man swings. When he does, Johnny ducks and shoves that 9-inch knife right into him through his ribs. The man falls onto Johnny and Johnny pushes him off of him onto the ground. You messed up my cowboy hat, he states, as he brushes it off and walks towards the house. While this is happening, Mrs. Smith has drugged Tessa's unconscious body to the balcony and is tying a noose around her neck with the intention of throwing her over to hang from the balcony. Johnny busts through the front doors and yells, Tessa! But no one answers. He draws his gun, searching room to room, still calling her name. He makes his way upstairs and hears ruckus coming from the balcony. He walks out and sees what's going on as Mrs. Smith almost has her completely over. Stop or I'll shoot! Mrs. Smith turns to him and yells and says, Do it! Ma'am, I don't want to shoot a woman. Leave her alone or I will shoot you. Mrs. Smith begins to pick Tessa up again and screams, She'll hang for this! Johnny had no choice but to fire. When he does, Tessa falls onto the balcony, and Mrs. Smith herself falls over to the ground, 18 feet below. Johnny rushes to Tessa's side, undoing the rope from around her neck. He kisses her and holds her in his arms. Come on, honey. Stay with me. Stay with me. Wake up, Tessa. Please wake up. Tessa begins to cough as she comes to. She looks around. Seeing no one, she says, Where's the babies? They're fine, honey. They're in the nursery. Where did she go? Did you get her? Yeah, I got her. She's gone. She was trying to hang you. Tessa shakes her head. Help me up. They go into the nursery and look at their children together. These are our children, Johnny. Johnny smiles, the most proud father in the world. What did you name them, Tessa? She shakes her head. I haven't. I wanted you to be there when I did. She picks up the daughter and hands him their son. I'll name her and you name him. Johnny smiles. Okay. She looks at the daughter and says, You, pretty girl, are now named Madison. That's a beautiful name, Tess. He looks at his son and says, And you, my son, are now named Jackson. Tessa smiles. I love it. They walk downstairs and she looks to the field. My other children are out there. I'm going to go get them. Okay, Tess. She walks off to the field and Johnny walks back inside the house. He looks at how fancy it is inside of there. He had never seen anything like it before. He was used to raggedy shacks and cabins his whole life as a cowboy in Texas. He walks down the hallway exploring the different rooms. He walks into their master bedroom and sees a box on the dresser. He opens the box and is surprised at what he finds. He smiles and puts the contents in his pocket. He hears footsteps racing up behind him and turns around quickly, just to be tackled by another man whom he had not seen before. The man starts punching Johnny and screaming, You killed my parents! Johnny now realizes who the man is. The man is on top of Johnny, punching him, and then grabs Johnny by the neck and begins to strangle him. Johnny thinks of reaching for his gun, but the man's grip is so intense around his neck that he fears that if he takes his hands off of the man's arms, his windpipe may be crushed completely. He hesitates on what to do as the man screams and his rage intensifies. Die! He screams. The man's grip instantly loosens from Johnny's throat, and he falls onto him. Johnny shoves the man off, gasping for air, to see Tessa standing there with a smoking gun. Thanks. She helps him to his feet. Johnny, these are my other two children I'd like you to meet. Johnny smiles at them and says, No, Tessa, these are our other two children. Johnny hits his knee and pulls something from his pocket. Tessa's eyes widen as she sees a big diamond ring in his hand. Johnny, where did you get that? Oh, I found it from someone who won't be needing it anymore. Tessa puts the gun on her hip, still holding both babies in her other arm. Tessa, I want to be a father to all of these children, not just my own. And I want to be a husband to you. Will you take my hand in marriage and make me the happiest man in the world? Will you walk through this dark world with me, darling? 'Cause you are my only sunshine. When I'm away from you, I'm just not me. And I'd love to spend each and every moment of the rest of my life with my love and my best friend, you. Tessa gets down on her knees with him, putting the babies down. She takes his hand and says, Yes, yes, Johnny, you know I will. They kiss as tears of joy stream down her face. He places the ring on her finger and it fits perfectly. Well, I'm glad it fits. But I'm going to take it back until we get married, okay? Okay, Johnny. She wipes her face and says, But Johnny, who's going to marry us? No one's going to do it, she says sadly. Johnny smiles and says, Don't worry about that, darling. I know a guy. This completes Chapter 12 of A Different Cowboy by Joe Jones. Please let me know what you thought about this chapter in the comments below. And if this is your first time listening to this story, please subscribe for more.